My name is Stuart McMacken. I work in ITS. We have with us today Bradley Sollenberger from OSI. And Brad is a Strategic Initiatives Manager at the UC San Diego Office of Operational Strategic Initiatives with extensive Lean Six Sigma experience in higher education and healthcare, as well as a certified change practitioner. Brad is the author of Lean Translated Strategy and is an LSS Yellow Belt instructor. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you.
Remember to talk into the mic.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the warm introduction. Hi, I'm Brad Sollenberger, and I've been at OSI for 6.5 years. Previous to that, I was at UCLA Pathology, and before that at Simmons Cancer Center, part of University of Texas Southwestern in Dallas, Texas. So I am a Lean Six Sigma practitioner. I've been doing this for 13 years, and although I've been a part of transformational changes that have literally saved lives, I would have to say a close second to that is changing lives through the dissemination of information, training, and knowledge sharing. The Yellow Belt program that I'm a part of, I've trained 4,000 people here on our campus, as well as several hundred outside of UC or at other UC campuses, and it's such a delight to share practices of Lean Six Sigma, how it applies in higher education, and how you can make it work for you in your departments to save patient lives, to keep researchers at their lab benches longer, to solve cancer and solve climate change and big problems that that this world is facing. And it also helps your students leave your university with a lower debt burden. These are the things that Lean Six Sigma has to offer. And what I want to share today is a way to envision a future state, maybe a little bit differently than we might be used to if you're already a seasoned Lean Six Sigma practitioner. So the word is Kaikaku, and you may understand the first syllable here, Kai. That may sound familiar, Kaizen, right? So if you're familiar with what Kaizen means, that means good change or change for the better. What Kaikaku means is radical change. So it's a complete paradigm shift where you're not necessarily incrementally improving an existing process like you might be doing in Kaizen. You are stripping it down to the studs and rebuilding a process brand new, completely different from how it looked before that. So going to the next slide, if no. Oh, no, it's on. Okay. And another good way that Kaikaku is used is not only to redesign and reimagine an existing process, this is also extremely beneficial for brand new processes. So if you're creating a new program, if you're creating a new office from the ground up, and you have to imagine what the processes might look like, don't just let them happen organically, plan them up front in a diligent way. And in this case, as you'll learn today, a very fun way. You go to the next slide. So these are the 9 principles of Kaikaku. So the first one is you throw out the traditional concept of your process methods. So don't be encumbered by this is how we've always done it, or this is what is always required, or this is what the customer always want. Don't even think about the boundaries of your process. We are beholden by policy to make it look a certain way, that the process has to be evaluated a certain way. Try to think creatively outside of all the constraints you have, and then consult with reality later. Think of how the new method will work, not how it won't work. Don't accept excuses. Right? Kaizen will oftentimes be bound by excuses. Kaikaku is giving people permission to completely think outside of the boundaries of the process. Don't seek perfection. If something's going to make it a little bit better, that's a great process. That is one worth designing. And a lot of these, don't spend money on Kaikaku, that's a good one. So the idea that is creativity before capital. If you have an opportunity to think creatively and dynamically with the systems that you already have in place, so you don't have to spend a tremendous amount of capital on an RFP for a brand new system to replace it, that is a worthwhile thing to do. And that's part of the implementation of it after you come up with a excellent revolutionary process. So this is what it looks like, to show you essentially that Kaizen and Kaikaku aren't, pick one or the other. You can do both, right? Having both of these tools in your repertoire is going to make for a successful Lean Six Sigma practitioner, each of you individually, as well as a successful Lean Six Sigma program that you're trying to build or develop within an organization. So this is what it looks like. This may look slightly different than your typical Kaizen, just because you're unfolding parts of your creative mind, you're rapidly prototyping the new process and sharing just crazy ideas. These are really successful when you have blank canvases, you're not working off an existing process map, perhaps, that you're Xing things out and maybe modifying the language contained within that square. You're literally starting with a blank slate. So in this case, if there's a physical process, you might even build, rapidly prototype. Here's what the hospital looks like. What if we completely moved around where units were? How does that change the way that our patient transport processes look? How does that make our discharge processes look? An example that we did here on the university campus was we were reimagining the physical layout of the Geisel Library, the historic Geisel Library that we have here. And what we were challenged with was having 3 different design principles that I'll get into in a second. But the benefit of it was we were able to come up with a plan that helped maximize student-centered space where they can either study and learn, where there can be access portals for student services, and try to minimize or at least move it off the main path, some of the behind-the-scenes support services, so that it was really a student-centric space the second they walked through the door, no matter where they went through inside of the space itself. All right, so yeah, we've heard a lot so far about Kaikaku, and it sounds really cool. It sounds really creative. It sounds really different from Kaizen. But what does it really mean? How do you set up a successful Kaikaku event? Well, what I would first say is set your pins. So have you ever heard of the phrase design principles? Design principles. So you want to come up with what are the primary goals that you would like to achieve based off of your process improvement event. So you take that criteria and you drop your pin. You say, this is really important to me. And then you drop a pin somewhere else and you say, this is really important to me. And so is this. And then what you do is you take all of those. Oh, great, it works now. And you list them out like this. So in this case, this was the library project, and this was an ESR process project. And these were the 3 design principles in all of those cases. 1, increase square footage of student designated space. The second one, increase number of physical customer service portals. 3rd, align staff space for optimal cross-functionality. When it comes to ESR, we have 3 design principles that were paramount. Design processes and reporting to optimize the student-centered experience. 2nd, minimize cloning of existing processes. And 3rd, meet user needs in the context of what's best for the university as a whole. So this is where the rubber meets the road. You'll notice that there are 3 different breakout areas in here. We're going to break you out in a second on an exercise, but this is how it would work if we were, let's say, designing an enterprise system renewal process. I would have one group over here take this first one. Your whole idea is, I'm trying to see if I speak to this. Your whole idea is you're going to be focused only on the student experience. Right? I want you to design a brand new process from scratch that is 100%, you are a zealot, you are a hardliner about the student experience. If a step in that process that you create happens to improve the faculty experience, it is completely by accident because you are only focused on the student for that one. Then the second group, they would go over there and they would try to minimize cloning of the process. So they would have to have reference of what the existing one looks like, and they better not repeat anything that's currently on there. That's the group that's going to have to really unlock their creativity and stretch the bounds of what's possible. Then the third group would go over there and say, okay, what's best for the university as a whole? So maybe that's the group that has to be a little bit more pragmatic. They've got to recreate a brand new process with that lens on. They're not thinking about the student exclusively, they're thinking about the entire university. Does this help the central office? How does this help the faculty? And we're keeping all those things in mind. So after each group creates their own version of the process by being a hardliner, you guys meet together and you share out. Here's what it looks like when we turn student experience up to 11. Here's what it looks like when we completely blow up the existing process and minimize cloning, so it looks completely different. And where the magic happens is when you start to see some resonance between the different groups. Hey, we both agree that a portal that has this functionality or looks like this or is inviting to the customer in this way is really successful no matter what lens we're looking through. Great, that's probably what we should be doing. The really fun but also challenging conversations are when there are two criteria that clash, that have complete dissonance. How do we creatively achieve the goals of both? And if we can't, which one are we going to prioritize? So from those three extreme setting of the pins, you go to your corners, you fill it out, you come together and you design a brand new process. The first way to start with that is you want to take your existing process and you want to reduce it down. Beneath each one of these boxes are about 5 or 6 different subtasks. This is an extremely long, detailed process when you break it out. And we got it down to essentially 5 steps. We said that something had to be submitted, that there had to be an eligibility check. We had to check for exception. There's maybe a review, but we put that as a blank. Maybe we get rid of it. Maybe we don't even need it. And then finally, a record change is made. And it's not saying who does it. It's not saying how it gets done. It's just saying what has to be done. Right? So at our most bare minimum state, that's what the process looks like. From there, you can build it back up. Okay, so we are going to turn it up to 11. We're going to break out into 3 groups. I'm going to give you your design principles, and I'm going to give you the process that I want you to reimagine and think about. If you're watching this virtually, you won't be seeing what's going on, but we're going to have a report out after about 20 minutes. So you'll hear some of their ideas and you can start to see what some of the conversations might be or the differences might be. So if you're listening online, take 20 minutes to go get a pretzel or a churro. We have those here. You may not have those wherever you're listening from, but we are going to give a makeover to the game of Candyland. All right. So who here has played this before? Who here has this at their home for their kids? All right. So we have 3 design principles for Candyland. Team 1 over here. You are going to put the children's experience first. So if it's a family game and the ages 3 and up, think about a child that is 3 or up, and you are only thinking about their experience with the game. If the parents are somewhat satisfied with how your game turns out, it is completely by accident because you don't care about them. You are a zealot, you are a hardliner for the child experience. That is your focus. Number 2, you're going to be the pragmatic team. It's got to be fun for the whole family, all right? You've got to consider the parents. Maybe you're even considering the dog, all right? You got to consider everyone. There can't be any fighting as a result of this game, right? That's your goal. And the third one, you have to come up with the groundbreaking format, right? Here we have, and you're welcome to go through this and reference it. Any of the teams can, but we have here a game of Candyland. If you would like to look at the board, if you would like to look at the game pieces, you're more than welcome to reference it. And team 3, this has a board. This has game pieces. You got to minimize cloning. You can't think this way any longer. You've got the challenge. You've got to access that high creative space that the other 2 groups maybe don't. All right. So that is a calling. That is a challenge for somebody to join team 3. We'll do some self-selection. We'll see how it balances out. Does everyone want to stand up and gather over where the group might be? So this is student experience. Stuart, if you would write on that board, child experience, children experience. And then the second group, that's fun for the whole family. 3, you're going to be the literal game breakers. All right, you've got to reimagine it. Yep. Yeah, you can go to whatever you want. You can pick the group you want to be in. All right. Fun for the whole family. It looks like we could use a little balancing. Oh man, we got a lot of game breakers over here. All right. All right. So you have 20 minutes and then we'll reconvene and we're going to do report outs. So start discussing criteria, what you want to see changed. This is all about rapid prototyping. So come up with as many ideas as you can and communicate with each other which ones you want to prioritize. All right, let's bring it back. And if everyone can return to their seats except for whoever, and then whenever each group does their report out, the designated person can discuss it. So, all right, so I am the senior vice president of product for Hasbro Games, and I'm really grateful for this consulting firm giving me an all hands on deck scenario here for improving Candyland. Sales are dwindling, it's anemic, and I am looking forward to the solutions you have provided. So would you mind, Team One, would you mind first sharing out what your criteria was and some of the groundbreaking changes you came up with?
Sure. So most of our criteria involved the absolute experience of the child at a young age. So we came up with, it's got to be colorful, tactile, has to have a lot of good smells and tastes. They have to be able to like run around and engage with each other. And then what we came up with after we came up with the ultimate fun time for a kid was the giant version of Candyland, interactive. Giant pieces, running through real castles, playing in the sunshine, going down slides, wearing cute little costumes, tasting the rainbow, and making the experience 100% interactive and learning about the real love in life, which is D&D. So we're taking our kids from the beginning and we're pushing them through the biggest experience of their life, gameplay, in a real size version with the potential to do VR, and you can have a complete immersion for your kid. That was the idea.
Great job, Team One. Yes, I like the tactile feel, the augmented reality, enhancing the experience. Wonderful job. Team Two, would you go through your criteria and what you came up with?
Came up with a lot of the same things, but since we are the same person, Summer, that works. All right, so we talked about having more token options so the whole family can get the one they want. So the little toys, like the actual like who you are, everyone fights over those. So we thought about doing that and then making it bigger with more options. And then we thought about making it a live version, like Twister with the live virtual. So we can add technology because kids like technology. So having a VR version of going through the real Candyland. Just like the others. And then we talked about trying to avoid cheating for families because that happens and then they fight. So having like a pre-shuffle thing for the cards, like a electronic one so that it's fair. Adding sound to the Magic Castle so it feels fun when you win. No negative rules. So remove the licorice square because we just want positivity. And right. And more candy symbols, more culturally inclusive options, Mexican candies and stuff like that. Super fun. Let's see. And then define the age rules. So there's a rule on there that's like different for the younger kids and the older kids. So make sure that those are defined and make sure it's fair when you define them. So maybe roll for categories. And then, possible incentives when you win. And I think that's it.
All right. So I hope you're paying attention. After we do this last group, we're going to start brainstorming. What are the ideas that mesh well together? Did one group hear something else that the other group shared that you're thinking, yes, and what you said, if you add it to mine, we can have this super concept. Group 3, speaking of super concepts, you are our game breakers. Who's going to speak to this?
So we're going with the same Twister real life thing, no board. So we started with thinking of 3D, but we're going to Twister. So the players are themselves the pieces. There's no pieces. We broadened the thought of not just candy. We'll say whatever treats you use, which means you could have adults playing this if they have shots as their treat. And we're definitely outside the board. So the Twister styles, we're thinking pieces, but we're thinking broadly, let's just make a map of anywhere. So it could be anywhere, but in the house, the whole house, the neighborhood, even the city can be it, which means, they might have to bike, drive, or Uber, especially if you have shots. We're thinking you need teams because, you need a designated driver. We thought of also, it doesn't need to be Candy Land. It could be any land, like Disneyland or Lord of the Rings style. So whatever land you want to imagine it, because it's anywhere and everywhere. No negative course, but you have branch routes. So you could make a longer loop or a shorter loop. So part of it is the winning. So we wanted to add sound to it. So maybe a buzzer for a time period to consume the items. So whatever the treat is, and the winner is the most consumed in the time period. So you accumulate the items, and then you got to consume it. And then whoever consumes the most in a specific time wins. We don't care about the kids. That wasn't one of our rules. So nor the parents. So I think I got that all in team. Did I get it? Okay.
All right. So my gears are already turning. I see some things that work. I see some big butting heads as well on some of those. Would somebody like to raise their hand? What did they hear from another group that they're thinking either that works perfectly with what we said, or I'm now thinking differently about what we put on the board. And I kind of want to add a little bit to what they've already said. So what's kind of working together, or what ideas might build off of each other? Does anyone have any thoughts? Anything that's, yeah.
Every single area you can use candy.
So a good point of alignment there, having physical candy.
3D game, or 3D game, interactive.
Kids are already in the 3D space. Why can't we be too?
Expanding the size of the game to a large interactive game itself.
So lots of points of agreement. Are there any that you are kind of thinking like Legos in your mind? I want to take that and I want to add it to what we were thinking. Was the
idea about multiple boards. Yeah, I love the idea about multiple boards where it's the Candyland, but you can do all different types of cultures, all different types of backgrounds, scenery. So the expansion is, there's no ceiling for it. And it's just the different places you can go with it. So we talked about, style of boards and make it more fun for the kids, but every culture might have something that's different, that's fun or appropriate for that culture. So adapt it and have multiple products out there to fit whoever wants to.
I love that idea. Anyone else see some ones that build atop each other really cohesively? What about conflict? Did anyone hear a conflict come up that we have to try to reconcile? I'll throw it out there. Parents getting really wasted will not be fun for the entire family. So how do we so is there a creative way to reconcile that? Or is there something that is that going to be we have to come down to a vote on that one?
To reduce the conflict of drunk parents, we can not suggest alcohol as a treat in the game and let them come up with that themselves. So it's not on us, it's on them.
All right. or light beer only. Any other that you heard that you were like, that wouldn't work on our game and our game wouldn't work for that one? Any criteria that's conflicting? No, don't be.
Maybe having to drive somewhere. So if it's too large, if you just have like 16 and under, like it's still a family, but there's no driving people in that group. So they couldn't go farther then.
Yeah. What if I live in a rural community too? I don't want to drive 45 minutes from Ramona to downtown San Diego. Well, have you seen the price of gas these days? All right. We have 5 minutes left. What I wanted to do was thank everyone for participating in a lively exercise. This is the surprise that happens when you just unshackle yourself of all the burden that you have in your day-to-day processes, the things that mire it, that bring it down, that force you to operate within certain boundaries. At least for a little bit, you can imagine what a blue sky scenario looks like. You can see an ideal state, a future state that is completely unencumbered from what it is now. And what that does is it allows you to approach it from now a different perspective. And those things that were in the way may not be in the way when you're standing here. And you can start building your process out from that. Right? So it's a completely fresh way to look at your processes absent of everything else. Start afresh, start new, but don't lose sight of the core principles that underpin the reason you're doing that process in the first place. We're doing this process, and oftentimes it's multifaceted, and there will be those points of conflict. Yes, it's primarily for the children or the students. But yes, we also have to figure out how can it work with central offices, with faculty. All right, we got to make sure that those vantage points are brought into this as well. We also need to think differently. This was a process that began 35 years ago. And there's just, like a boat that's been sitting in water for a long time. It's just building up flotsam and jetsam. And it's just nasty, and nobody designs a bad process. But the natural order of the world is chaos. And it just grows chaotic, and it grows bigger, and it becomes more inefficient the longer that it's out there in the world. Right? Nobody designed a bad process. It just kind of happened because we weren't looking at it. So now's the time to take that completely fresh approach, to take that really fresh perspective, and make those processes in a future state that you can envision. And once you envision it, then you can start coming up with a plan to make it happen. So I hope you appreciated today. I have cards here. If you ever want to get in touch as far as how to effectively design this, I skipped over a lot just for the sake of time, but how do you even come up with those design principles in the first place? That's a completely different conversation as well. There's a lot more to it. But if you think that this is something that's potentially worthwhile for your team or for you as an individual, I love talking shop. I have my email on here. Honestly, not enough people take me up on it. Reach out. I would love to talk more about Lean. And I appreciate you coming here and making it part of your day. I know it's the end of the session and it's the end of the day. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I gotta outro you real quick. Okay, thanks everybody for being here, and thanks so much to Brad. That was really fun. Please move now to the Price Center Theater for the Process Palooza closing ceremony. Thanks everybody. Great job, Brad. That was awesome.